Alright, welcome back to the concept review. We're going to chunk the concept review into three sections. 1 through 6, I think it's 7 through 12, and then 13 through 15. Okay, so there are some challenging problems in there, and they'll kind of increase with difficulty, but let's just go ahead and get started. So number 1, this is 5 raised to the negative second power. Alright, well, as soon as I see that negative, I know that tells me turn it into a fraction. Take my base, put it in the denominator, and then it's to the positive version of that power. So it's really 1 over 5 squared. Well, 5 squared is 5 times 5. That's 1 over 25. So they want me to evaluate the expressions without a calculator. They want me to simplify. Okay, so there is number 1. Number 2. I've got 9 raised to the 1/2 power. Well, and this is the one I would remember, okay? Because if you don't remember the rules of fractional exponents, always remember that the 1/2 power is the same thing as the square root. And when we square root, all right, that numerator 1 is saying my base is getting raised to the first power, and then the denominator 2 is saying, well, that's the power of the radical that you're taking. This is the square root. Okay, that's how I remember this. So square root is just saying what number times itself 2 times will give you the thing under the radical, will give you 9. Well, the square root of 9, as we all know, is 3. So 9 raised to the 1/2 power is the same as the square root of 9, which is 3. Okay? Let's jump to 3. So this is, once again, a negative power. This is 2 raised to the negative 5 power. All right, well, when I have a negative, it's just put it as a fraction, right? This goes in the denominator. So this is really 1 over 2 times itself 5 times. So 2, 3, 4, 5. And multiplication is wonderful. I can do the simpler multiplication and kind of group it. So 2 times 2 is 4, times, bring that down, 2 times 2 is 4, bring down that multiplication and bring down that 2. Well, 4 times 4 is 16, times 2, that's 32. So this is all really 1 over 32. Okay, 2 raised to the negative 5th is 1 over the 32nd. 1 over 32. 1/32. But I suggest you expand this out, or at least know what you're doing, and then kind of fill in the blanks on the calculator, okay? But they said no calculator, no calculator. All right, 4. 25 to the negative 1/2 power. So this, because it's a 1/2 power, I know what I'm dealing with, the square root, but because of this negative, the negative is the first thing I always deal with. It's a fraction. It's 1 over 25 to the 1/2 power. Well, 1/2 power just means square root. Well, the square root of 25 is 5, all right? 25 raised to the negative 1/2 power is really 1/5, okay? And you could think of it as, you could break it up in pieces instead of dealing with the negative first. Multiplication is, it doesn't matter which order you do it. So let's do the square root first, okay? What's the square root of 25? Oh, that's 5. And then because I've evaluated, it's just to the negative 1 power, which tells me it's 1 over 5. That negative tells me do the reciprocal. The negative is telling you to do the reciprocal in a sense, okay? So 5 is the last of kind of the easier ones. 6 will be a challenge. And 6 has got a trick to it. There's one of 3 well, we'll deal with it when we get there. So 4, fractional power. So I'm going to rewrite my base. It's not negative, so I'm just going to leave it as is. Rewrite my base. The numerator, right? That numerator tells me raise my base to that. And then the denominator tells me I'm square rooting. Okay? So let's simplify. Still square rooting, but it's now 4 times itself 3 times, all under the radical, all under that square root. Well, this is 16, and then still times 4. Well, that's 64. So this is really the square root of 64. Oh, well, that's easy. That's 8. Okay, so 4 to the 3/2 power is really 8 for this logic here. And then last but not least is 16. And this is the tricky one, okay? It's one of 3 outcomes. 1, you're just stumped. 2, if you know the rules, you can use a calculator and do it the long way. Or 3, if you remember the rules of exponents, there's tricks you can do. You can factor out things. So I'm going to first note that I've got this negative here, okay? And hopefully you'll see this as a creative solution. I've got this negative here. So that tells me the negative is do the reciprocal. We could do the long way, but I know it's just telling me switch my numerator and denominator. Right? I'm claiming negative means reciprocal. Okay, but I'll show you the long way. I'll tell you the negative means put the whole entire number, this whole entire number, over, put 1 and then that whole entire number in the denominator. Okay, so I have 16 over 25, all raised to the 3/2 power. Well, let's get rid of this. You can't have a fraction and then a fraction in the denominator. You've got this clever little trick, okay? You keep your numerator, so 1. You change. It's keep, change, flip is what you'll hear. Keep your numerator, change your operation. So instead of division, right, that's what a fraction is, the opposite is multiplication. And then we're going to flip. We're going to flip our, we're going to flip our fraction. So instead of 16 over 25, it becomes 25 over 16. And then this 1 is really 1 over 1. And this thing's still getting raised to the 3/2 power. Well, 1 times that is 25, and 1 times the denominator is 16. And this entire thing is still to the 3/2 power. Okay, so when you see the negative, it's just the reciprocal, all right? So I'll do this a little bit quicker now. To the negative 3/2 power. So that negative tells me do the reciprocal. All right, and now, so there's a trick with this 3/2 power. There's a power rule that you can, when you raise a power to a power, you can break it up into a product. So raising this to the 3/2 power is this entire quantity to the 1/2 power, then whatever that is, raised to the 3rd power, right? And that's because that 3 over 2 is the product of 1/2 and 3 over 1. You can break up fractional powers into products. So instead of doing square root of a cube, we're going to do the square root first and then cube our result. Rather than cubing first and then square rooting, it'll make the math easier. Okay, so once again, I can rewrite this thing as this because I'm taking this 3/2 power and I'm writing it as the product of fractions of 1/2, which I know is the square root, and then 3 over 1, right? 3 over 1 times 1/2 is that 3 over 2. And I did this because, look, 25 is a perfect square. So let's evaluate the red. So I'll draw my green. My green says take whatever's inside those parentheses and raise it to the 3rd power. And now we're going to evaluate the red. The red is saying take the square root of my numerator, 25, and you have to apply it. You have to distribute it to both numerator and denominator, and take the square root of your denominator. Okay, so the square root of, let me put this in green again, 3. So let's evaluate this. The square root of our numerator of 25 is 5. The square root of our denominator, 16, is 4. So this is really saying, now I want to cube my numerator and cube my denominator. And this is really 5 cubed over 4 cubed. Well, 5 cubed is 5 times 5 times 5. Well, this is 25 times 5. I know that 4 times 25 is 100. If I add one more 25, I get 125 all right, summing this, 4 and that, blah. Okay, so this is 125 in the numerator, and then in my denominator, it's 4 times itself, 3 times. Well, that's 16 times 4, that's 64. So this is really 125 over 64. 125 over 64. And I'll tell you what, let's convince ourselves and do it on the calculator. Now I'm doing this blind. Hopefully I didn't make this up. I actually followed some rules. So let's do exactly what they have here. Okay, when you're using a graphing calculator, you do it verbatim. Parentheses, 16 divided by 25, end parentheses, raised to the negative 3 divided by, oops, I forgot to raised to the negative 3 over 2 power. It's giving me that number, that weird number. Well, I'm going to do some math, right? There's the math button. I'm going to take my answer, take that answer, 1 point whatever, and convert it into a fraction. Oh, I got it. I didn't type in exactly what was on the paper. Let me do it exactly. 16 divided by 25, end parentheses, raised to the negative, and it's the negative 3 over 2 power. I think that will change it. Yeah, that changed it. Did it change it significantly? Math. Answer fraction, and there it is. There it is. See how that negative not being in parentheses, it changes it a lot, okay? So there is, you can see our solutions mirrored. 125 over 64.